We all grew up learning that the best way to invest is to diversify. If you're an idiot, my name is Gary Wong from GaryWongRealty.com, and I'm the author of the book on Vancouver real estate. Once again, I'm here with my business partner, VIP client, and great friend, Peter Liang. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you, Gary.
We've been shooting a series of videos on wealth and money, information that you can't get anywhere else. So if you missed some of the previous episodes, there are more links in the description below or somewhere in this video. You can check out our last video. In today's video, we're going to talk about a very, very common principle that we all grew up listening to, which is you gotta diversify whatever you make, diversify your investments. But in this video, we'll share why diversification is for idiots. So Peter, diversification, diversify, you grew up listening to it. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. You know what? It's funny you mentioned that because there's a lot of celebrities, there's a lot of very key investors that talk about diversification. But I think there's a very big misconception on diversification. The difference between, what they talk about is different streams of assets, right? Different things that they can invest in or different asset classes that they have. That doesn't make it necessarily diversification. A lot of times, we're under the notion, diversifying means that you have X amount and you're putting 10% here, you're putting 10% there. That's what we commonly, feel or know as diversification. But for the wealthy, they look at diversification as an entirely different thing. Not only do they do due diligence, they then vet the deals that they're going to do, and they're willing to provide very large resources, 10, 15, 20, 30% of their portfolio into an asset that they know will generate some substantial growth or appreciation over time. So they see it as, okay, I can allocate is the right word, into multiple streams of income. And that's what they consider diversification.
So allocation is different from diversification.
That's right.
In the sense that they invest in something that they know really well, that they've done their due diligence. But what do the typical middle-class person define as diversification?
Well, when they see the right thing, what they do is they go, well, I'll put 2% at that or 5% at that. Well, that'll never really do anything, right? 5% of your net worth, and you try to have it grow even 10% a year. It's going to be a very small piece of your portfolio over time. So it's important once you know what you want and you are able to define the parameters of your playground, you can go, okay, these are 2 or 3 things that I actually want to do. These are 2 or 3 things that I'm able to understand. I'm able to decipher good from not and invest in those things in a big way. And so real estate is one of those where a lot of people, as you mentioned in a previous video, people go, oh, I'm gonna buy real estate, but if they save even $1,000 a month, I'm gonna diversify $250 a month into investing into real estate. It's gonna take them a long time, right? Nothing wrong with that, but the wealthy look at it and go, okay, how am I gonna structure this where when I see the right property, when the right opportunity comes, I'm willing to put what I know about real estate behind me and make the right decisions.
And that could be anywhere from 30% to 40% or even more.
Yes.
And then some people might take the message the wrong way and be like, well, I know Bitcoin really well. I'm going to put 100% into that. What do you say to that?
Well, they do their due diligence. If under your due diligence, you believe that Bitcoin is the only thing, I mean, I'm not the one, I should not be the one to verify whether, it's the right investment or not. At the end of the day, it is your financial well-being. But understand, it's the values of money. If you can't justify it, if you can't liquidate it, when they look at a project of this nature where they're investing heavily into an asset, like Mark Cuban, he's invested into a sports team, right? That's a good chunk of his financial well-being. Right. But at the same time, they understand what they're getting into. They understand how they can earn an income from it. They know how they can have a hand in the results to make sure that it grows. And that's a similar thing where most people look at it purely a passive income. and they go, okay, I'm going to diversify, a little bit here, a little bit there, and try to build a portfolio, that have a tendency to not be very successful.
And many people, they try to follow Mark Cuban's footsteps, many of the wealthy, and they say, well, he's investing in a sports team, maybe I should. And then a lot of high net worth individuals who invest in sports teams actually lose money. So they're following other people's footsteps, but they're not understanding the why and how and doing their due diligence. Do you see that happening?
I do, right? It is imperative that you like what you do, right? I love real estate. I think that's no question. I love business, and so I have a tendency to want to understand what business is like, what is up and coming, what's new to the market. I love to go eat out at restaurants. I love to be in the know. And so for me, it's not really work. You know how you've heard people, wow, if you love what you do, it's not really work. Well, a lot of people go, well, vice versa. I don't love what I do, and therefore it becomes very tedious work. So my learning from other professional investors is it's very imperative that you get baby steps, and those baby steps lead to results. And that's why I do believe in having not necessarily buy your first home that you can live in, but perhaps buying that home to invest into, because that allows you to see those results. Oh, it's done a little bit better. It's done a little bit better. And the more that you enjoy it, the more that you'll actually want to learn it. And the more that you want to learn it, the more that you're gonna go deploy that capital. We talked about the passion cycle.
Correct. So the key principle is to diversify, not just
allocate,
not just spread money around, but allocate your funds into something that you are passionate about, and then also doing your due diligence on those things, and not just copying what other people do without understanding. One of the key principles I learned from my mentor is don't just copy what other people do, but understand what other people are doing and why they are doing it, and then see if that works for you. So don't just be like, even if you are a high net worth individual watching this video, just because you see so-and-so investing in a sports team doesn't mean you should do it too. It has to depend on each individual case basis.
Absolutely. Well, keep in mind that one other thing that we can very quickly talk about is the multiple streams of income, right? The wealthy, when they allocate to these different sectors of business or to different asset classes, what they expect is a return of their capital. And that return of their capital, they take that capital and now they can allocate further into new things, right? So what does that mean? For example, let's say you buy a home, right? As a positive cash flow, you're able to generate $500 a month. They take that 500, instead of perhaps investing into another property, what they would potentially do is they would take some of that 500 and diversify into their two other sources of income that they believe can grow. So it's constantly growing on more money. And that's what a lot of very, very successful entrepreneurs do is allocation of their funds into things that they're passionate about, having some of their real estate or some of their core assets generate income. Those income funnels into other asset classes which will have the potential to grow. And that's when you have growth on growth over periods of time.
And obviously, don't just take the income, the passive income, and just invest in something else that you don't know. You always have to know what you're investing in. So even if you're taking the passive income and trying to reallocate it into other investment vehicles, it's imperative as well to do due diligence always,
yes.
Not just in the main source of investment, but even your secondary sources, you have to do your due diligence on that as well, right?
Yeah, if something came up for sale in a certain area, I have a pretty good idea. I can make a very, very quick decision because I already have done my due diligence way before the opportunity became available.
Right.
And that's what you want, right? As successful entrepreneurs do, you're prepared to take the shot, right? You need to be taking the shot when the right opportunity comes around. Not just, oh, okay, well, how do I study this when this becomes now available? And that's with every investor, as a professional investor, as a sophisticated investor, having the right people around them, having the right knowledge that they stay up to date on, and they already have a view. They believe, oh, okay, what do I see of Vancouver real estate? Unless things change, and things are okay to change, right? You can't have the same view all the time, right? Sometimes things change, and it's okay to do that. But also understand when you're doing things for the long term and whether you're doing it for the short term. those are very significant different choices that you have to make when investing.
So I think those are really great nuggets. I think most people just struggle with the term of diversification and allocation because they don't want to put the hard work in. They don't want to do their due diligence. They're lazy. They hand it over to their financial planner at the bank and they go, oh, why don't you invest it into some index fund or mutual funds or something like that. So what's wrong with that, or what do you think about that?
Well, I think if I have a saying, if you invest into everything, you get nothing, right? You can't possibly invest into everything. You have to identify what meets your goals. And, to many circumstances, yes, the bank will tell you, okay, buy this fund, buy this balanced portfolio. I'm not against it. The fact of the matter is I don't choose very much of that to, put my assets on. Number one, because it is the biggest thing about having a fund portfolio like that is they're always generally invested all the time. What that means is even if based upon how the financial market works, we can cover that in another video, is how when the market takes a big tumble, they're fully invested. So I go with it, right? Because the fund managers generally, I don't I spill the beans here, but fund managers watch over their jobs a whole lot more than my money.
That makes sense.
Right. So they want to make sure that when times are good that they're outperforming, which very seldom amounts of funds can, and when it drops, you're fully invested, right? So one of my mentors has said, never be fully invested at all times, and those are some of the key rules. That's where cash is king. That's why, one of our videos, we talked about why you need a little bit of, people call it emergency fund. But there's ways that you can actually have your emergency fund growing as well. Your emergency fund doesn't mean literally, putting it under the mattress, but you can do a lot of these things by just structuring it correctly, where you have your emergency in still a growing asset, maybe a very low growing asset, but very secure, because you wouldn't ever want to lose your emergency fund.
Correct.
But you still can have a little bit of growth where it allows your wealth to be growing all the time. Again, if you invest into everything, you get nothing.
So what would you say to the veteran real estate investor who hasn't been allocating their funds this way? What would you say to the average investor, and what would you say to the beginner investor in this field?
I would speak with the sophisticated investors and say that the core assets, look at what the core assets around the world has done, right? We obviously want substantial assets growth because not very many of us would be interested in buying a condo, because at the end of the day it's just too small a portfolio, and in order for them to deploy that type of capital, you have to buy a lot, and it doesn't really make sense because of the we tend to look for bigger assets to buy, right? And that's where you see the Bentall towers being sold, or you talk about financial buildings being sold, 30-story buildings being sold. That's because we want to diverge into these assets where it's a substantial part of our portfolio. We wouldn't want 1% here, 1% there, and that goes back to diversification. So for sophisticated investors, I would look at putting more money, a bigger part of our portfolio into core assets, right? Core long-term assets. For the investors that are midterm or medium-sized investors, I would say look into the commercial aspect of things, right? Because those are for the long term as well. Leases that drive 5, 10, 15, 20 years are available in the market. And those are the type of things that you can get yield and build a passive income within what you're capable of. And sometimes there's some very, very key advantages of investing into commercial real estate.
We'll talk about that in a future video.
Last but not least, in terms of beginners, I would say, have your emergency fund, have your short-term and your mid-term investments still growing, right? Rather than sitting just purely in the bank. Utilize the resources that the bank has for us, and actually have your money grow, whether it's in ETFs, robotic investing, systemized investing, or perhaps in monthly prepaid authorized plans. I think those are things that the average Whether it's the average or not, we all do it. These are not just principles that only apply to one class. They apply to all different classes, just the amount that they allocate to each type of thing. So for beginners, I would say make sure, even for the young folks that I work with, I'm passionate about youth, working with the youth, is make sure that you have your money working and have it working, even if it's 1-2% per year. It's a whole lot better because you see a little bit coming out of it. And when the opportunities come, make sure that you're not fully invested at all times.
Great, Peter. So one of the recurring themes I'm hearing is do your due diligence always. Don't diversify into small portions without knowing what you're doing. Allocate bigger portions of your money into products or investment vehicles that you do understand. And great advice, if you've found value in this video, wait until you see the next video. So stay tuned, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching my video. Tell me what you liked about it. Comment below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you'll be notified of future videos. And if you want to learn more about real estate, click the videos over here.